Hey guys, and welcome to another video. Today I wanted to do a Q&A, a regular one for the normal viewers. The last Q&A we did was almost 2 weeks ago and was specifically just for people on Patreon, which is great, but what about everybody else? So today I wanted to answer 3 of your questions, and specifically, everything here is going to be Heart of Thorns based. Don't forget as well, guys, the competitions are still going on. We're about 2/5 of the way through. Still tons of rewards left to give out. I haven't actually done a voiced reminder to people about that for a while, so just remember that those are happening, and there will be an annotation hidden on this video. Alright, so the first one comes from Septentriones94, who says, do you think we'll see any guild halls in Ore? The southern and eastern parts are not available to explore, and the risen threat should have decreased inside Town's death. I'm actually finding that one of the most exciting things to me to speculate about in the future now is where those extra guild halls could be added. I've mentioned countless times now the idea of having a guild hall in the super adventure box, but yeah, there are so many places that guild halls could fit into the open world. I love the idea specifically of Claw Island becoming a guild hall. That's a big one for me. There are definitely chunks of Ore that could totally become one too. What you got to consider is Aras story mode kind of expresses a huge area of Ore, like a big magnified perspective of how large Ore is, without it really reflecting much on the world map. And I would love to have some extra stuff in Ore, like a guild hall place somewhere in there. And actually, yes, this would be a great opportunity for us to see what that place is looking like a little now that the cleansing has began. The story in Heart of Thorns, of course, did not touch at all on whether this cleansing and these roots and these vines and this jungle stuff that was planted by Caladbolg and the Pale Tree has anything to do with Morgemoth at all. But maybe that would be an opportunity for them to talk about that too. I have been a little surprised that the Guild Hall NPCs are some of the most fleshed out, funny, interesting, cool characters in the game at the moment. So anything more to do with Ore would be absolutely fantastic. And of course, for another Guild Hall, there is still that thin strip of land out there in the Shiver Peaks. I'd also like to see heavy gliding, heavy, you know, updraft-based place again, but up in the mountains. Next question is from Ricky222 Ruffle, who says, here's a question for you. Now that the expansion's been released, and so far we have to wait for raids, of course, which are in just 2 days, guys, by the way, nothing happened with the whole White Mantle story arc. Do you think Sol D'Alessio did indeed visit Tyria, or that there's another golden city in the jungle? I did wander around in Tyria for a bit, looking for any hints or Easter eggs that might suggest he was there, but so far I couldn't find anything. Yeah, I absolutely don't think that the Massart were imposters hiding in Tyria, that Sol wandered, found them, and that, you know, they took up lodgings. Because if there was any semblance of a story like that, there would have been, you know, some markings on a wall, some leftover Massart armor, some relic, you know, a Massart token, for example, or some tell that Sol had been there, or that the Massart had been there and then moved on again. There would have been some exalted NPC who in passing had mentioned such a thing. They would have hinted at it, even if they didn't want to express it fully. And so, basically, I guess ArenaNet just added another golden city. They didn't think at all about how weirdly this conflicted with existing lore they had. The scared child in me fears that they just forgot about the story with Sol in the first place. And so where does that leave us, though, realistically now? I'm guessing that the golden city that Sol went to with the Massart and so forth was actually somewhere up north. Further, this theory that the Massarts are exalted, just like an earlier version of exalted, also had nothing tapped into it at all. Like I say, you know, the Heart of Thorns story was incredibly bare bones. Basically, any of the speculation you saw on my channel before the game came out, except a very few minor little pieces, are still 100% valid and get pushed anywhere because the game just had so little. What I would say, though, as a little bit of a tie onto this, there was something in the expansion. Now, there is suggestion that Tyria hasn't even been, it's not the only bastion that the Exalted of the Maguma Jungle enacting Glint's legacy have been at. They actually do talk about, you know, the Guild Hall, the Gilded Hollow, the Lost Precipice, for example. Those are actually old ruins that the Exalted had built. They were other versions of Tyria, for example, but they fell over time, and then the Exalted were pushed, and they ended up building Tyria, and Tyria is like the most recent one. So it's possible, I guess, maybe that the stories still line up. It's just that Tyria wasn't it, but it was still linked with our modern day Exalted, and the Massart did that. But, you know, we're talking about heaps and heaps and heaps of speculation here. Very much, I doubt Tyria had anything to do with Sol D'Alessio. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, I would say, as well. Next question from Tony Scala, who said, hey WP, I got a question. Do you think we'll ever see Heart of Thorns related content brought to the rest of Tyria? Gliding primarily comes to mind. It probably require an immense amount of work for ArenaNet as parts of the map weren't designed for it, but I think it'd be pretty interesting to see. Thanks for your time. it depends how gung-ho the devs are. It depends how cavalier they are. It depends how little fear they have. But they could actually do some really interesting things by littering those Heart of Thorns masteries back into the regular world. I actually, in principle, don't see any major problems with this. It's kind of one of those inconsistency things, and I feel like ArenaNet really values consistency in a lot of places. So it's very easy to just have a blanket rule for themselves. All right, we will never have a Nuhawk Wallow that is outside of the Heart of Thorns maps. Nuhawk Wallows are trained in Heart of Thorns. You get experience in Heart of Thorns maps. It's all Heart of Thorns based. We are not putting a Nuhawk Wallow anywhere else. But I can't help but be thoroughly excited by the idea of, in a small corner, you know, think about the demon spawn pits, are they called? Oh, the jumping puzzle in the bottom right of Queensdale. Okay, I haven't been there for ages. I can't help but be thrilled by the idea that at the end of that jumping puzzle, which kind of ends a bit crappily, you know, just a Nuhawk Wallow gets added there, just randomly, right? And you're like, oh my god, I've been to the jungle, I've mastered Nuhawk Wallow, I'll go through this. And then it takes you to like an extension of that jungle puzzle, and they kind of add a little more of that stuff in there. But again, when you're thinking about new things coming into the game, it's always a question of what's the worth of doing it. I do think there is some worth as well. I'll get to the gliding discussion in a second. But, you know, doing stuff like this, like adding jumping mushrooms, just randomly every now and then in a place in the Caledon Forest, or a Nuhawk Wallow here or there, or some mushrooms that people can eat for like a bit of super speed, or an adrenal mushroom somewhere unsuspecting. This kind of stuff, if it was just littered around, might actually do a lot for pushing sales of the game, because what you have to consider is it may not be so evident right now because most of us playing are Heart of Thorns players, but when Living World starts rolling out, when we start going back into this place where Guild Wars 2 is like bubbling around in the background of general gaming landscape, okay, and every now and then it kind of pervades into someone's life and they're like, oh yeah, Guild Wars 2, these people are going to be making free-to-play accounts. They're going to be doing free-to-play accounts, and what is one of the best ways that ArenaNet can remind people about Heart of Thorns? Well, by finding that stuff scattered around the world, right? And then, of course, we come to gliding. Gliding is the main one people want. My argument here, really, with respect to the other masteries is, yeah, gliding, I think, definitely deserves to be in a lot of regular Tyrian places. And, again, it's got this great thing where, let's say they put gliding into Lion's Arch, okay? They put gliding in Lion's Arch, and you are a free-to-play player. You see your mate glides off a certain place, and you have to just jump down into the water below. And that's really going to do a lot for making you think, damn, I really want Heart of Thorns. I really want to be able to glide as well. That exact same thing can happen with the other masteries too. And I just think, if you're going to sporadically drop gliding back into the regular world, which so many people want, why couldn't you sporadically drop the other masteries into the regular world? They all have value. Gliding arguably has the most value. The places that I don't think we'll see gliding in regular explorable maps. I just don't think we'll see it. I think it's way too much effort to design those maps to enable gliding. The breakouts would just be obscene. And again, the amount of payoff from the effort of relooking at every single map like that and fixing all the breaks that are going to be coming for like a year to come, it's just not worth it. It's really not worth it. Plus, it gives that added flavor and fun, again, an incentive for when you get to the jungle, and makes the jungle maps feel a little bit more special. Further, think about this. They can't even just add gliding to one odd map here and there that's an explorable map, because then they need some way of describing to the player base which maps have gliding enabled. And it's going to seem kind of arbitrary and weird that, oh, Queensdale has gliding, but Kessex Hills doesn't. And then they may even have to put you out. It's just a mess I don't think is going to happen. That said, though, there definitely are places in the regular world that gliding could be used. If you consider new guild halls that get added as being a part of the regular world, then those definitely, I think, we'd see gliding. But the cities, all right? The cities are what I want to get at. Cities, generally, yes, like you look at the Black Citadel, it's a damn complicated place that gliding could easily break. But, you know, with just a little bit of caution to the wind, plastering of invisible walls around, and, you know, a bit of a look at it, I think that it can be brought up to be gliding compatible pretty quickly. And you don't even have to add exclusive new little areas where you can glide to, and there are Easter eggs. You don't have to go that far, but I do think that gliding can be added to the cities. Divinity's Reach, the Black Citadel, not Ebonhawk, not Fort Trinity, but Divinity's Reach, Black Citadel, Holbreck, The Grove, Ratasum, and Lion's Arch. I think those places are absolutely great places that we could have gliding, and the other masteries too. Last thing I would say as well, the idea of gliding being added to core Tyria stuff, non-expansion stuff, first came up and was really met with a big reception because of the Heart of the Mists. Now, Heart of the Mist is also a great place, I think, that deserves to have gliding. And the original thoughts were put forward as such. Gliding is a lot of fun. People in the early days were still getting a huge kick out of the novelty of gliding around. I do think eventually we'll get kind of bored of it. And, well, not bored of it, but it'll just kind of fall into, you know, background of what it means to play Guild Wars 2. But a lot of people wanted it in Heart of the Mist because it was fun. And a lot of us are spending ages wasting time wandering around doing nothing because we're not allowed to play PvE or anything else while queuing anymore. So you just have to stand there in Heart of the Mist. And either you involve yourself in conversations with people or you're basically going to get bored. And when it comes to building a viewer base on Twitch for competitive Guild Wars 2, for building esports and stuff, it really sucks that a lot of the streams, when you tune into them, yes, they might be in a match. The spectatability and stuff of matches, there's a whole host of other problems. But a good third of all those streams is just people standing around doing nothing. Maybe talking about builds or interacting with chat a little bit. But ultimately, very boring, nothing happening because it's Heart of the Mist. So you had gliding there. You had updrafts there. Again, you catch these free-to-play players. Imagine if esports did blow up with Guild Wars 2 and people would make a free-to-play account specifically to play PvP, and all they can help but do is look up in the sky and see all people gliding around in the updrafts and stuff. What a great idea. Beyond that too, people are kind of suggesting, you know, Heart of Mist already has good enough terrain for gliding. It already has kind of obnoxious kill zones and you are leaving the area, you're going to be teleported back. It already has places you're just going to fall to your death. But it's also got like lots of chasms and things, and it'd be kind of cool to glide under some of these bridges that we've been walking across for so long. And because it's in the mist, there's really not too much that would have to be done at all to make that a more interesting gliding place. I'd actually go a step further, and again, because I think so much of streams and our time is spent in Heart of the Mist, and Heart of the Mist is basically just a crappy looking area. It's kind of all kind of grey. It's using just a ton of the old ruin assets we're also familiar with at this point. It's a lot of flat areas. There's nothing really very fun going on with it visually, especially compared to what we know the devs are capable of now because of the jungle. I actually would be an advocate of just redoing the Heart of the Mist completely. Just redo the Heart of the Mist and add, you know, updrafts in there, add gliding in there, add maybe even some bouncing mushrooms and some new Hawk Wallows that take you to all the different areas of PvP, whatever, as like little teleport pads. And then in that way, I think you're going to engage people who are waiting around to queue a lot more, and also the game's just going to look pretty and more engaging and more enticing to prospective buyers and people interested in getting into our competitive scene. So I did just spend ages talking about all the cities in PvE. I think first and foremost, the Heart of the Mists would get priority for me for getting gliding in other maps. I think it deserves it, and we may see it at some point. But then again, it's a pretty big table arena that already has, right? Next question is from Cherie, who says, I enjoy your videos, but seriously, who cares about lore anyway? I don't know, man. I think you're right. I think you'd have a much better time playing Guild Wars 2 if you just ignored the lore altogether. Absolutely. Sneaky Grizzly said, what's been the most surprising feature in Heart of Thorns that you hadn't even imagined ArenaNet could implement? Okay, I talked yesterday about how adventures was the thing that surprised me most, is how good they were, how much I enjoy them. But specifically, the most surprising feature I didn't even imagine they could implement. I could imagine they could implement this, but I didn't imagine they would so soon. And certainly, seeing now that they're capable of implementing it, unless there's some weird problem with it, I'm surprised they didn't do it more. And that's that crazy spiral thing at the end of the personal story in Heart of Thorns. That the vehicle-like thing that you stand on and it spins you around and it actually... that thing's insane! Why don't we have more of that? I really hope that the Season 3 maps have more of those things. That was totally badass, and I haven't seen that be too glitchy or weird or any... Oh my god, think about the jumping puzzles and stuff that can be used with that, guys. Think about how you can apply that engine technology to floating icebergs across water and all that other good stuff that I've talked about before. That is cool! I never expected that at all. And then it's just like slapped in there at the end. What a fantastic little thing. They got kind of a cool achievement associated with it at the moment too, but oh my man. What a cool... so that's definitely the most surprising random little thing. Can it even be considered a feature? I think it's like an engine capability example, which I do think could mean good things for Guild Wars 2 in the future. I really do. Next question is from Chad Napic, who says, WP, do you honestly think the new open world content is difficult? I played through the new maps and story missions on a full Zerk Necro. Nothing's intended for one player was actually hard. Of course, Necro isn't a good reference point as it has 2 health bars, but even going a full Zerk Mesmer didn't change it that much. It was a step up, sure, but many PvE mobs have few hard-hitting attacks with massive tails. I don't even play PvE content normally, but I can't see where people are crying from. You've mentioned changes in builds, but do you think this could be more of a learn-to-play issue? As always, the answer to something like this, it's a bit of both worlds, okay? Mesmer I don't consider a very hard class either for running around in the open world. Yes, it's light armor, but it's not too bad on the vitality front, and specifically, it's got a lot of AI generation, and AI makes things really, really, really easy, even if you are consistently shattering stuff. With the new like health that your phantasms and stuff have when they're not being directly targeted, Necromancer absolutely is disgustingly easy. Reaper, don't forget, guys, I played the Heartthorn story twice. Okay, start to finish, once on a Tempest, once on a Reaper, and there's just a crazy difference. Like it's like you're playing two different games. The Reaper, yes, I went pure Zerk, pure offensive, no concern for anything else ever, and I rarely, if ever, went down. Right, because you just dodge roll when you can, if you fancy, every now and then, or you just take a ton of Death Shroud damage, and that's basically it, and then it builds up really quickly again. Reaper is really, 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 really easy. I do think Mesmer's a step up. All that said, though, I don't think that people should be crying about this, because I do think that ArenaNet have hit a good balance. Again, it's very difficult to find the balance here. Obviously, everyone has their own personal taste of how difficult the open world jungle should be. In general, I do very much value the fact that this shouldn't all be insane, difficult, OP, horrible gameplay every day. Yesterday's Adventures video, about 2/3 of the way into the video, I believe, is where this footage appeared, before I cut to me and Boots. You see me running to the drone race, and I was on my Ellie, so probably like, you know, the biggest example of how squishy you can be, and I went down a bunch of times to shadow scales because I wasn't paying 100% attention, got a bunch of death penalty, barely survived, walked over to some pocket raptors, and they killed me. And some people might be like, yeah, that's cool, the jungle dinosaurs are dangerous and they can kill you. But also, at the same time, if you're fixated on doing something else, if like I was going for that drone race, I didn't find that particularly fun. I was like a bit annoyed by that. I was like, oh, for God's sake, I'll go waypoint back, I'll go do it again. It was just a bit annoying. So you got to be careful, you got to find that balance, because it will get annoying and even infuriating to people if it gets too difficult. I think they hit the balance very well. It is not a problem with just Heart of Thorns that there's a big difference between some classes and other classes. And maybe that gets addressed more in the future, but we'll see. Last of all, we have a question, a pretty cool question, one I was had a lot of fun speculating about, from Aswavez, who says, WP, how do you think the central heroes from Guild Wars 1, as in your character from Prophecies, Factions, and Nightfall, compared to the central hero from Guild Wars 2, the Pack Commander? How do you compare them in terms of their abilities, knowledge, accomplishments, slaying Abaddon versus slaying an Elder Dragon, the state of the world, available magic, and other important factors you might know about? What do you think, who could win in 1v1? Well, actually, when you asked this question originally, I never comprehended that you'd added the available magic thing in there, but that is something I'd speculate about. Okay, so here's what I would have to say. Prophecies character really wasn't a great leader, really didn't have much of a personality, really didn't seem to have much ambition, just sort of went with the flow. Really wasn't that impressive at all. Doesn't really stand up to the Guild Wars 2 hero. However, I would say that the Prophecies hero was a fantastic survivor of the environments, of landscapes, alright? What was the deadliest thing that the Prophecies hero did? Well, they destroyed a ton of Titans. The Titans being powerful enough to wipe out the Massart, the Massart being powerful, just 3 Massart being powerful enough to wipe out, you know, an entire army of Char invading Kryta, right? The Titans are badass, powerful things. So, yeah, they slayed some dangerous stuff, some deadly stuff. But when you put it into perspective of the global world of killing gods and elder dragons and stuff, we're not really too high up the scale here, I'd say. You know, the Titans are just a byproduct of a god, for example. So what I would say really the Prophecies hero was very good at was surviving landscapes. What did they do though? They said, you can't say, oh, the Guild Wars 2 character's better because they survived the Maguma jungle. The Prophecies hero survived the Maguma jungle too. And it was a treacherous and deadly and scary place back then too. But not only this, the Prophecies hero didn't spend all of his time wandering around, you know, the relatively okay environments of the Shiver Peaks, which were prone to blizzards and dangerous things like that. Or Ascalon or Kryta, okay? Or, you know, the Tarnished Coast. It did all of those, but then the Prophecies character went to the Crystal Desert. You know, an environment responsible for the destruction of hundreds of thousands, potentially, of previous people and, you know, remnants of old civilizations who had gone there. Absolutely deadly, inhospitable place. Even up in Guild Wars 2, when you read the records from the Zephyrites who had been there recently about how dangerous and scary and horrible the Crystal Desert is, the Prophecies character went through that. They went through that. And then they went to the Ring of Fire, too, the Fire Island chain. And when you read the stories about how deadly that place is, about how there's only like one natural port on the entire place, and the brimstone and the ash and the ever-shifting lands, and how dangerous and deadly that place is. And we survived there, too. So that's what I'd say their main perk is. To move on, the Factions hero. What did the Factions hero do very well? Still, I'd say personality-wise and stuff really didn't do too well. The Factions hero, though, did survive plagues and illness and, like, infection that was spreading across everyone, right? And, like, was in a pretty deadly, scary scenario in that city for such a long period of time. Survived it handily, was absolutely fine. Not to mention the fact that the factions character came back from the dead. I don't think it gets more badass than that. Actually came back from the dead. So that's definitely a perk from them. You full on died, and then because of your value to Tyria, a divine being actually brings you back, like, full on, beyond what we're talking about with resurrection abilities, with like Grenth and stuff like that. Came back fully. I mean, because you can make the argument everyone came back from the dead back in Guild Wars 1, but we'll get away from that. And then lastly, you've got the Nightfall character. I think the Nightfall character had a lot of personality. I think was a genuine leader, stood up in times of desperation when Cormyr was absent, and eventually killed a god. All right. Also went through the inhospitable landscapes. And also went into the mist, you know, the realm of torment, and came back out. Kind of had all of it in one. I think you got the most badass when you were at Nightfall. I have the North hero. I don't really think did too much. I think she just kind of wandered around, gathered some allies. Wasn't a particular leader, even though you were gathering the allies. Wasn't particularly badass or anything like that. Just kind of got introduced to a bunch of new stuff that was going to be relevant in Guild Wars 2. And then ended up killing an Elder Dragon champion. But that doesn't really compare to Guild Wars 2. So let's compare it to Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2... You're killing Elder Dragon champions all the time. All the time. Now, there is perhaps a hint or a suggestion that Primordus is so much more badass than the other dragons, that his champions are so much more badass and so on. But, you know, you look at the Mega Destroyer and stuff, I don't know. I mean, do they have an explicit Primordus champion in Guild Wars 2? I guess not. So maybe you can suggest that, you know, Primordus' champion was the Great Destroyer was so much more powerful than Tequato and so forth. But the Guild Wars 2 hero has done some great stuff. Killing an Elder Dragon could be better than killing a god. Could be better than killing a god. But then, did you really kill an Elder Dragon? Definitely not with Zaitan. I'd say that was more the Pact. But with the Heart of Thorns storyline, yeah, I think now you are up there on that badass scale. I think you are up there on that badass scale. And despite everything I just said about the perks of the Guild Wars 1 characters, I think the Guild Wars 2 character would win in a 1v1. Easily. Why? 2 reasons. Number 1, magic. The world of Guild Wars 2, we have much higher ambient levels of magic bubbling around. People are much more proficient with it. They're much better with it. 2, you can look at mechanics. All right, let's go like a blend with mechanics and lore first of all. Mechanics, Guild Wars 1 was entirely group content. Can you ever say that the Guild Wars 1 hero did anything on their own? No, you can't. You can say they were assisted by 7 other people and did something. You killed Abaddon with 7 other people. 8, actually, because Cormyr was included. All right, the Lich, the same deal. Anything amazing you did, really, unless you're talking about pre-searing Ascalon, you did with other people. Guild Wars 2 heroes, you can at least for a lot of the story and a lot of the accomplishments say you did it on your own. But again, with the pact stuff, you did tend to have a lot of allies. However, the other thing mechanically, if you want to go pure mechanics, if you want to go MMO nerd about it, the Guild Wars 1 hero was level 20. The Guild Wars 2 hero is level 80. Enough said. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the Q&A. Leave any questions you may have down below for future videos, and I will see you next time.